Happy spooky season! If you can't tell, Halloween is one of my favorite seasons. Honestly, fall and spring are some of my favorite seasons because there is so much to do and so much to look forward to. I've already been to a fall festival, and as you may have seen, I went to see Beetlejuice in theaters, which it's rare for me to go to theaters nowadays. And that was a wild ride of a movie. I enjoyed it, and there was a lot going on. So I thought I would take some time and share some of my favorite spooky things, fall themed things for you to enjoy and for me to revisit. If you haven't already, grab your cup of tea and join me. Today's tea is a spiced chai with a homemade pumpkin spice syrup. If you don't know who I am, I'm Josephine. I'm an animator, artist, and creative adventurer where we explore the different creative tangents that I go on. And today's creative tangent is going through some of my favorite books, going through some of my favorite movies, and even going through some of the zines that I've made for the spooky season and making a new zine today because I haven't made a zine in a little bit and I miss making them. So buckle up and let's get going. So to get started, I have a massive book collection here to share with you. I love art books, and these are several comics and manga and art books and children's stories that I've collected over the years that bring me a lot of joy, including, if you can't see back here, some of the Addams Family books. To kick things off, we are starting off with Brian Froud's The World of Fairies. Brian Froud is the artist that you've seen in The Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal. Those are all things that have been inspired by his works, and he worked heavily with some of the concept artwork. And if you are wanting the autumnal feel of fairies, something that is not traditionally seen for these otherworldly creatures, this is the book to check out. I grew up with these fairies. And his artwork is amazing. I also have his tarot deck, which is a very interesting read to work with. His works have helped inspire many a story, and they are beautiful, but not fully in the traditional sense of beauty, with the layers of wrinkles that he tends to put on the different characters. He goes into a lot of different folklore involving the fairies and how he has gained these visions of them, and I think it is an absolutely beautiful thing to look forward to and to explore. I want to, one of these days, go through and just do a full-on art study of his work and maybe make a story with them, or just several pieces, like a series or something, because his stuff has been so influential to me as a creative. Next up, we have the art of Koya Mori, who is an artist I've been following on Instagram for a very, very long time. And I love her work. She uses a lot of patterns and details and a combination of water, color, and ink to create her pieces. Having this sort of simplified anime style, along with a large combination of different watercolor patterns on it, creates such a unique feel to her work, and inspired me to include more patterns, not only in my artwork, but in my wardrobe, like this one. Now we jump from the art books to the illustrated books and stories, beginning with a good classic, such as Dracula, in Moonlight and Nightmares by John J. Muth. And this is a really fun illustrated book of the Bram Stoker's Dracula, set almost like a play, like you're following along in the story, or like you're watching a movie. This is very good for getting some inspiration for the season, as well as looking at the use of watercolor, and I love a good watercolor piece. John J. Muth has a very good use of washes in his work, as well as using the negative space to his advantage to create some very eerie retelling. By Susan Branch is a great book to have if you are looking for different things to do during the holiday autumn season, a list of wonderful recipes as well as different journaling stories, music and songs, different activities and other things that you can do during the spooky fall season. I love it so much because it's a great addition to have on your shelf to remind you of the different things you can do during this autumn season. Now, a book that I've loved since childhood and have kept with me is The Little Old Lady Who's Not Afraid of Anything. This is just a very cute story about different little spooky things that would scare other people but doesn't scare this woman until you get to the surprise at the end. Going back into some classics, we have the Grizz Grimley's Frankenstein. This is a illustrated interpretation of the Frankenstein story by Mary Shelley, and I love it so much because if you want to do something that is like an illustrated story, but you also want it to be more in a comic book form, this is definitely one to check out. There are whole pages that is silent comics where there are no words and just images to express the story. And then it does have different aspects of the story written in or combined, as well as some that even have speech bubbles built into it that has your eye traveling and following the story in a very fascinating and engaging way. I would love to see more comics and stories done like this for not only children's books, but also adult books, because I think it's a great way of visualizing the medium and the story you're telling, while also getting the deeper feeling of each of the words that are being presented on the page. There is a woman named Queenie Chan who coined the term comic prose to represent this illustrated style, which is more comic than it is a prose sequence, and it combines things very well and keep you engaged in a book. Of course, we can't forget Anne Rice's Vampire Lestat. This is the comic version of the story by Derek Grouse. One of those stories that I grew up with, and this is how I originally read Vampire Lestat. We have these gorgeous ink pages that are done in different colors to show the different flashbacks and the life cycle of the Vampire Lestat. That is done in mixed media, from watercolor to acrylic and ink. Of course, we have to include Charles Addams' My Crowd, which is a collection of his stories and illustrated pieces all into one nice book, including some of the Addams family, and as well as just some fun, silly pieces that include some macabre humor. Of macabre humor, we have 101 Uses of a Dead Cat by Simon Bond. This was a gift from somebody I know in the UK, and it is a very, very macabre humor of the different ways to use a dead cat. The pen illustrations are very simple and gets to the point real fast. Pulling from my manga shelf, we have the Chibi Vampire, which is a old manga that I've had for a very long time, since I was a teen, about a girl who comes from a family of vampires, but instead of being a vampire like the rest of her family, she is able to go into the sunlight, and she ends up giving blood instead of taking blood. And there's a lot of different shenanigans that goes into it, and it's just a fun, silly story to revisit. Another book that is part of my manga collection is going to be Princess Ai. I love this because of the visual K elements to it, and if you are very much into K-pop, you're going to love this story because this is definitely a precursor to a lot of the manga stories that we see now, with K-pop fans being turned into magical creatures in some way, or having magic in some way as well. This is about a girl who doesn't remember where she comes from, rises to become a rock star, and somehow gets involved in a war between angels and demons. Now, this is not a surprise to find on my shelf, as I absolutely love vampires, and so of course I had to include Vampire Hunter D. Vampire Hunter D is a story about a dhampir who roams the earth after vampires have risen and fallen from power. And it goes through this grim sci-fi fantasy and how people react to him as a dhampir, which is a vampire and human hybrid. I originally got into Vampire Hunter D via Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, which is an old animated movie that came out in the 90s. If you like 80s and 90s style anime, this is definitely one you should check out if you already haven't. You can find it available on YouTube now. I know some people have uploaded it for people to watch. Or you can find the DVD on sale through thrift books or other places. It is a gorgeously animated movie that has helped spark some of the most iconic things in modern anime, very similar to how Akira is a very memorable series. The next few books are not necessarily part of the spooky season. These are more part of the autumn feel. I always like to come back to and at least read once every couple of years. The first one is The Edge Chronicles by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddell. This particular book is called Beyond the Deep Woods. I love it because of its wild illustrations of the most unique creatures that this kid runs into, as well as it talks about the misfortune that this kid runs into a lot of as he tries to escape the deep woods. Another book series that I love to revisit that is very autumn feeling is the Redwall series. The book and the animated series I like to revisit. I actually didn't read this as a kid. I was introduced to this series when my little brother had gotten into it when he was younger. I fell in love with the books instantly because of its description of food, and I hope to add the Redwall cookbook to my collection of books someday. The descriptions used in the book are very great for putting you in the feeling of the season, as well as takes you on a wonderful journey of meeting different creatures and following a hero as he goes from the beginning of his journey and growing into a icon of his world. One of the tabletop RPGs that I will be playing this season comes from the book Constellations, and it is from the zine called Project Daybreak by Jackie Lung. Essentially, you're playing the crew that is transporting Dracula from one planet to another and slowly discovering the horror and mystery of the creature that is slowly picking off you and your crewmates. The interesting thing about this particular game is it not only uses a tabletop RPG setup, but you use a tower of Jenga or blocks to determine how long your crew is able to survive. This is a 2 to 4 player game, and I look forward to trying it out with some of my family. A game that I love to revisit, and I still have pieces coming from the original Kickstarter of this game, is Darkest Dungeon. Whew, this is heavy. Darkest Dungeon is originally a roguelike RPG that you can get off of Steam or whatever gaming platform it is available to you. I love the Lovecraftian and dark mystery style of the game so much that I ended up getting the co-op board game for it. It comes with over 270 different pieces to play with, as well as many dungeon tiles to go through and explore in a randomized dungeon sequence, and it has its own unique story built into it. If you want a dungeon crawler game, see the spooky vibes with a clear end goal, this is definitely a co-op game I would recommend for you to play. It does have a little bit of a learning curve, so be prepared for that if you are unfamiliar with playing different kinds of board games like this one. One of the other things that I've been doing during the spooky season is doing a 31 Nights of Spooky, and this is mainly me going through the different streaming services and the different DVDs that I have in my collection and watching them with my family A lot of them include classics like Nightmare Before Christmas, The Labyrinth, the Scooby-Doo movies, the live-action ones specifically, even some that I've never watched because at the time I found them to be too spooky, but I now find them to be a bit more comical than spooky, such as The Return of the Living Dead and The Evil Dead. I'm not a big zombie person, but I did enjoy these series. Out movies for me this year is Fright Night, the remake version, and Beetlejuice, of course. I did also go and watch the Mortal Instruments, which I had not watched when I was younger, when it was really popular, and I do find that it fits the spooky vibe pretty well. The new to me TV show that I've been enjoying is something called Blood Ties. I know you can see a theme here, as I really do like vampires. Now that we got our brain juices flowing from visiting some of my favorite physical media of this autumnal, this spooky time, let's get into making some zines and revisiting some zines that I've made in the past. I've participated in several drawing challenges over the years for the month of October, and I've enjoyed all of them. 5 years worth of zines that I can share with you all, even including ones that I haven't printed out here in its smaller format from my sketchbook of last year for 2023. These spooky prints that were really great and fun to put together. But I haven't made one for this year yet, 2024, and I would like to make a short style zine, sort of like how Boo Scary and Bedsheet turned out, which is only an 8-page zine. Adventures these 3 got up to during the month of October. I was debating on doing more of their spooky story, or maybe going on and introducing a set of new characters in a more autumn-themed story based off of Mock here, who is a wizard turned mayor after he retired from adventuring, and how he and the kids who he mentors enjoying fall for their little town. Also want to do some more watercolor, because watercolor that I've already had some practice with this year for the season, and I used my new sparkly watercolors, and it just has a lovely shine and sparkle to them. I don't know if the camera is able to capture it, but I'd like to play with this a little bit more. All of these zines are available on my Ko-fi. Some of them are free, like this one, or you can get these ones for $1.50, and I've made them available as printables so that way you can print them out immediately. I'm not in a place right now where I can do mass printing to print and ship to people, aside from maybe if it was only just these 1-page zines, which I might start doing. So I'll get to brainstorming, and then we will get to drawing. So my initial plans got thrown out the window because I was so taken in by the washes that were done in this book. I really like how expressive it is, and just how you can see the textures in the watercolor. And since I don't do washes that often, I thought it would be a good time to practice them a little bit. So I have a few pieces that I've tried to do some of the washes and some of the more expression work that you can find in this book. And you can see I have a sort of basic forest wash here. And I also have this kind of moody, misty piece. I still am struggling with getting it as expressive as this person is, but I do know that he's working on bigger paper than I am. I tend to like smaller pieces, and these pieces are easier for me to store. I'm going to continue to play around with this until we have a story out of some of the stuff that I make. Now, the inspiration that I'm pulling for these pieces, I actually flipped through my gigantic collection of magazines that I have been given over the years, or I have kept over the years, I found this pumpkin piece and I really liked it. And this was from like a Martha Stewart Halloween thing. I really like just how moody it is, and then, just stacking pumpkins, it fits the Halloween theme, right? And I thought I could do a fun wash watercolor piece with that. And as I was flipping through, I found a whole bunch of other pieces, including this one that I really liked. I mostly just like the lighting of how it falls on this character, on this person, and love the idea of making like a witchy character out of her, and maybe she lives in this house, and we'll see how we combine all of that together in a little bit. And there we have it. It turned out to be only 7 pages instead of 8. That's all I had the patience for, and a lot of the water that I was using ended up turning very glittery because of the paint I was using, and just like wanting to add a little bit of color of some of the glitter that I was using. Like this one, I used one of the glitter watercolor for a base, and then I painted around it, and it just became very sparkly. I like how all of this came out, and I did make it into a little 8-page zine with this piece being both the front and the back. You can find it for free on my Ko-fi. I ended up not putting any words to it this time around because it just didn't feel right. I feel like it tells the story itself, and you can make up what goes with it. The idea for this is that on Hallows Eve night, or on Hallows Night, a pathway in the forest opens up, and if you can brave the forest, you can get your wish granted by the witch who lives in a pumpkin. Very much gives the spooky vibes with how I was able to do some of the washes. I'm very, very pleased with how they've come out, and definitely worth doing again. So thank you as always for coming along on this tangent with me, and I hope that you too have a happy spooky season. Tell me what you've done. I would love to hear about the things that you've done for your spooky season, and I'll catch you all later. Bye!